administrator for the Arnold and Mabel Beckman Foundation postdoc program, but I will be covering today's office hours because our current program administrator for the BYI program is out on maternity leave. She'll be back on Monday, so she'll be available to answer any questions that come up throughout the webinar. But I am here today with Dylan. Dylan Domaille is a professor of chemistry at the Colorado School of Mines. He was also a 2022 Beckman Young Investigator. So we're going to begin with some of our slides about the program, eligibility, and the process of applying for our award. Then I'm going to turn it over to Dylan, and he will provide some additional guidance on his experience with the process. And then we'll save a few minutes at the end for a brief Q&A. All right, so the Beckman Young Investigator Program provides research support to the most promising young faculty members in the early stages of their academic careers. This is in both chemical and life sciences, particularly those two that will foster an invention of methods, instruments, and materials. To date, since 1991, the foundation has provided $130 million to 400 early career awardees, which is really exciting. As some of you may know, our LOI is a blinded review. We've highlighted the importance of the blinded review last year when a few of our members from the foundation were published in eLife. They took 2,000 applications over an 8-year period, 4 years of pre-blinding and 4 years post-blinding. Pre-blinding, pre-2020, they noticed that 75% of the awards went to applications from the top 25 institutions. But after blinding, this decreased to 45% of the awards going to the top 25 institutions, just showing how important the blind review really is. In the upcoming slides, we'll discuss how to properly blind your review to help with this process. The program guidelines are as follows. The project should be innovative, high risk, and show some promise to contributing to a significant advance in chemical or life science. It should support an early career scientist who doesn't have major funding from another organization. Projects should represent a departure from current research rather than an extension or expansion. It doesn't need to be completely new, but it should be the logical next step of what you're working on. Projects are funded for up to 4 years, providing $150,000 annually in support. And with that funding, the foundation does not allow overhead or indirect costs from your institution. To be eligible for the BYI, you should be an early tenure track professor. You must have started after 1/1/21 and before 8/1/25. You must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident at the time of interview. You should have no more than $225,000 in external direct funding. Clinical research or clinical trials are not eligible for funding through our award. Government labs such as the NIH and other federally funded labs are not eligible institutions. Applicants can apply for a maximum of 2 cycles, and that does include this first step of the LOI. An applicant should have no more than 10 years, post their terminal degree, and no more than 5 years in experience in a non-tenured track position. And again, you can refer back to those dates of 1/1/21 and 8/1/25. So currently we are in this stage of our LOI. It opened in June and it does close August 1st. Notifications of those who will be moving from the LOI to the full application step will be notified in November. You'll have a month to complete that new step of the process. It would be due in December. The notifications for moving on to the interview would be sent out in April. Interviews are also held later on in April. And just a note that the foundation does not provide feedback to applicants until the interview stage. So if you were to advance or not advance from the LOI or the full application stage, you would not receive feedback at that time. To apply for the letter of intent, please make sure you are eligible. You can check that out on the website, and I'll show you the webpage as well. And then you can begin our application. It is a 4-page LOI pre-proposal, and that does include your images, citations, references. We ask for a bio sketch with a template that you can find on our website, a current funding chart, and then 2 institutional signatures. This is usually from your chief academic advisor and the dean. Let's go back to the blinding. So we ask that you do not include your name, gender, or any institutional information in your LOI. It's very much encouraged that you write in third person to help with that. We ask that you don't include names of your collaborators, mentors, postdoc advisors, or other lab members. If you are going to reference your own publications in your LOI, that's fine, but please do not use any formatting markings like an asterisk or bolding, italicized lines to identify yourself in the list of authors. If you have any unpublished work that you would like to include, please use the format shown here. And that way we can keep that blind process intact. If you are in a unique science and you think that it would be easy for a reviewer to identify who you are, that's okay. A reviewer can identify people by reading their paper or just being familiar with your science, and that's fine. As long as you follow these guidelines, it will not disqualify your application. We do have a similar training with our reviewers and have a very serious conversation with them about if they are able to identify who you are, that they need to keep that to themselves and that they don't have a discussion amongst themselves about their findings. In addition to this office hours, there are additional resources on our website. I'm going to flip over to the website so you can see where to find them in a second. But there are 2 examples of successful pre-proposals. These both happen to be chemistry, but we do fund life sciences as well. There is a guidance document to help with the pre-proposal. There is an FAQ document, and then there are additional office hour times available. I believe there's one next week as well with Nicole when she's back from leave. And then I would just like to point out that the guidance document is extremely helpful. It was actually written by an executive committee member. So there is really great details in there. It's a great document to refer to. I'm going to flip over to the website just so you can see really briefly where on the website you can find it. So on the website, this is the Beckman Young Investigator page. You can find that by going to Programs We Fund and the BYI page. There is this tab that says Program Overview, and this is where you can find all of the links to these documents that I just referenced. Okay, so for current funding, if you've applied in the past, there was some different formatting, so we're just bringing this to your attention. We only ask for current funding in this tab of the LOI, and the foundation defines current funding as funds that your lab has either received or expects. We don't want you to include any pending funding, and we consider pending funding things that you may have applied for, but you don't know where that funding stands. If you don't know that that funding is secure, please don't include it in your funding chart. Once the application has been submitted, we'll start a review process. We form a panel of former awardees and other scientists from many institutions across the country to review your applications. They're reviewed by that panel of 3, and then they go to a selection meeting. Reviewers will select 100 applications to invite to that full application step in November. From there, the full application, you must remain under $225,000 in annual direct funding. Applicants then would go to the interview stage, and only 16 will advance to this stage, and they will be interviewed by members of our executive committee, and we'll go from there. Award recipients will receive $150,000 in funding per year for 4 years with the option to apply for a no-cost extension for year 5. Awardees may use this funding for their salary, equipment, materials, childcare, and other mentor training expenses. Awardees are also invited to our annual Beckman Symposium, which is held in late August, or I'm sorry, late July or early August of each year. And finally, we will have a Q&A at the end of Dylan's slides. But if we aren't able to answer your questions, please email the program officer, Nicole Patras. She will be back from leave, like I said, on Monday. But just before I move on to Dylan's slides, I just want to remind you that we really encourage you not to wait till the last minute to press submit. Wi-Fi crashes, computers break, crazy things happen. So please don't wait. If you think it's ready to go, press submit before August 1st, just to avoid those things. But thank you all for your time. I'm going to pass it over to Dylan. And then, like I said, we'll save some time at the end for a brief Q&A. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Danny. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides. All right, let's get all this out of the way. All right, hi everyone. I am Dylan Domaille, and I am a BYI from 2022. I'm currently at the Colorado School of Mines, and what I wanted to do today was just kind of talk through my timeline of being part of this program, the initial unsuccessful attempts, and then the successful attempts, as well as kind of doing a post-mortem and identifying where in that first application things obviously weren't up to par to allow me to proceed to the next stages. And so obviously that's not something I can do for myself, but hopefully it's something that all of you get a little bit out of. All right, so so my first application to the BYI was in 2018. And so I was at the letter of intent stage and I got past the letter of intent stage. So I was one of those 100 invited to submit a full proposal, but it went no further than that. And so, with the great wisdom of in 2022 of looking back at that and looking at, the things that might have caused it to be a weaker application, some pretty obvious things emerged. Number one, it was a very limited scope. It was essentially one idea that had a couple complementary designs that would basically accomplish the same thing. So it was almost one idea with a couple contingency plans. As I'll get into in a little bit about the full proposal and the letter of intent, this is really going to be kind of a death blow to a proposal. It's not really going to reach the standard of exciting the reviewers. Um, it definitely had way too much background information and technical detail. I think this is something that a lot of young faculty suffer from. What you know is all the details about the experiment that you're going to run. And so you want to show that you know that, and no one wants to read that. So yeah, just be confident that you know it and talk confidently about what's going to be done. But certainly in 2018, I included way more details than anyone except for probably myself cared about. And then number three, I wouldn't say this is an explicitly bad thing in the BYI, but there were linked objectives. And if you're familiar with applying to funding at the NIH, this is something that is going to basically get your proposal triaged. If your first, second, and third objectives are all linked, they're linked aims, and so the success of the subsequent objectives relies on the success of that first objective. It provides kind of a weaker foundation for the overall proposal. Sometimes you can make it work. But also keep in mind that the people reviewing this have almost certainly reviewed for the NIH as well. And they might, they've been trained to kind of look for these things. I personally think it makes a stronger proposal to not have those linked objectives. But in the rare case, maybe you can make it work. Again, it's not explicitly something that you can't do in this proposal call, but it is a little bit of a risky attempt. And that was something that I had in 2018 that didn't help me at all. All right, so then looking at 2022, and what I'll do later is go through this letter of intent, my letter of intent from 2022, in detail. So one thing I realized that was different was that it was a much more coherent framework rather than focusing, the interest was in the 2018 letter of intent was all about the material I was proposing. In 2022, it was couched in a much broader context, the very broad context of inflammatory disease. Um, and number two, it was much more ambitious. So to put that in context, I spent 4 pages in 2018 um, putting together this letter of intent. It ended up being maybe 3/4 of a page in my second attempt. All right, so it's basically been distilled down to less than a quarter of what it initially was. And that is going to be a much more impactful way to put your proposal together. And then finally, the objectives were thematically linked, kind of under that larger umbrella of inflammatory disease, but they were not dependent on the success of the others. So objectives one and two could completely fail, but objective three could stand on its own. And again, this is something that I think generally just makes for a stronger proposal. Okay, so general notes, and I will reiterate that that guidance document on the website is very valuable, and the example letter of intents are also very valuable. Those didn't exist when I wrote this, and I'm from an institution that had never had uh, really any interaction with the foundation before. We had no Beckman Scholar Program or Beckman postdocs or Beckman Young Investigators, and so it was very there was a lot of, I think, luck involved in just kind of managing to hit the right notes in my particular submission. But now there's a lot more resources available, and I think that is you certainly take advantage of them. They are really valuable documents to look at. So my my general uh, advice is that think this is a 4-year program. And this is actually one of the hardest parts of writing the LOI and thinking about this proposal is, what scale should I shoot for here? It's 4 years, but it's also, high risk, high reward work. You don't want to propose something outlandish, but you also don't want to propose something very safe and something that potentially could get picked up by the NSF or the NIH under their more standard award calls. Um, you know, in an NIH or an NSF proposal, you basically make the case that this is the state of the art, and I'm taking it that one step further. In this case, you are kind of building a framework and arguing that during the course of this, you are going to define a new direction in science. So it's a very ambitious idea. And when you're thinking about the scale, think about big ideas. Those are going to resonate much more strongly with the reviewers than something that is a bit more incremental. And so yeah, taking an old NSF or NIH proposal and just summarizing it, it's probably not going to be successful. Probably the new innovator program at NIH is the most similar, but by and large, you should be thinking very ambitiously about the idea that you're putting forth for this, one of two attempts that you have at this award. Um, the other major piece of advice I would give is that you need to identify an idea that aligns with the mission of the Beckman Foundation. And this is true for any funding agency, but especially, the Beckman Foundation. Think about Arnold Beckman's career, the development of a spectrophotometer, and how the development of a single instrument opened up huge areas of science that wasn't available to be studied. And not only was it, new technology that enabled these kind of fields to develop, but it was also accessible and something that is now kind of a mainstay in labs around the world. And so thinking about the ramifications of your project is something you really want to think about. So, what's really nice is that and I guess one way I would think about it is you've got some grand challenge, and can this grand challenge be solved by, quote, inventing methods, instruments, and or materials that will open up new frontiers in science? All right, so everyone on this call has a different scientific training, and you have, your own niche, and there's grand challenges in that field, maybe explicitly defined or just known to be there. And if you were tackling that grand challenge, can you approach it and potentially solve that grand challenge by inventing methods, instruments, and or materials? And if so, what are the ramifications, i.e., how will this open up new frontiers in science? So this is straight from the proposal call. And I would say this is the sentence that you need to think about a lot. Um, this actually, I'd say this almost tells you how to write the proposal. This phrase here, this component here, this is the technical bit of your proposal. This is what you know, what you are proposing. The second portion, I would actually argue, is more important at this stage. This is how you pitch it. This is the ramifications that if your project is successful, these are the new fields that will open up as a result of completing this work. So this is a very important phrase to focus on, and I would encourage you to return to it as you are drafting ideas and trying to determine the scale and scope of your project. So that's a bit of a big ask, right? Okay, define some new approach that completely revolutionizes science. So one thing, and maybe another way to think about it is to kind of take the taken approach, right? Where you think about yourself, and I'm a chemical biologist. And so I knew a lot about synthetic chemistry and photophysics. But then I did a postdoc in chemical engineering and worked a lot with biomaterials. And so this is a kind of an unusual combination. And as you'll see when we go through my LOI, this allows me to propose new instruments and materials that can open up new frontiers of science because I have a very unique training. Everyone on this call has a very unique training. So potentially, if you're struggling to come up with this idea of what you should be looking at, think about yourself. Think about, what are you an expert in? What is your unique path through science? What are the discoveries you've made? And when you think about that in aggregate, does it point toward you being particularly well suited to tackle some grand challenge? And maybe that's a grand challenge that you haven't worked on explicitly, but your training makes you really well qualified to tackle it. And so that's another way of potentially thinking about and eliminating or coming up with ideas to pitch or to frame your LOI around. All right. So, as someone with a very short attention span, I wish I listened to my own advice. Don't just start writing your first idea. Um, you know, revise it, refine it, ask people about it, and really think about this phrase in the call, and does it fit in the program? I'm sure all of us have heard the word fit when talking about, I'm sure the hiring committees who hired all of you talked about fit when they were, thinking about the candidates. Does this proposed work fit with the mission of the funding agency? It could be the greatest proposal in the world, but if it doesn't align with the objectives of the funding agency, it's still a good proposal, but it's unlikely to be funded. All right. So what I thought I would do is go through kind of a dissection of my own letter of intent. So this is 4 pages, and you are proposing 4 years worth of work. And one of the things I really struggled with was figuring out how much space to allocate for each section. Um, so what I would do, what I thought I'd do is just kind of go through my own. Again, there are a couple examples on the website. And so here's mine. You can screenshot this. It's totally fine. So first, I didn't come up with the title first, but this is still my favorite title ever. So the title I ended up with was Decrypting the Cues That Drive Inflammation with a Biomaterial Cipher. All right, so this is like action movie kind of stuff. And I will tell you that this was actually the theme I continued when I got to the interview stage. And I talked about kind of deciphering a code and mimicking a code. And so, kind of coming up with that theme now, and if you can maintain it throughout the entire process, makes it seem like a really coherent story. So anyway, so I started off with just a single paragraph, and this was an overview. The reviewers are overworked, probably tired. Make this easy on them. And so I just, it's a one paragraph that covers the entire 4 years worth of proposed work, and really focusing on the motivation for the work. So my work is focused on developing tools to track inflammatory cues in disease states. So our proposal is focused on developing tools that allow us to interrogate different aspects of inflammation, and tools that will open up kind of areas of investigation that haven't been accessible because of a lack of technology. So I mainly start by talking about just the statement of fact. This is a statement that is certainly true, and then very quickly transition to where the current state of the art is. This is literally 3 sentences in, and we've got the statement of fact, and then this is where the field is. And then a bit of time, and this is going toward the motivation, is the reason for the limitations. Why, in these current efforts, these are some problems. Do these problems exist? And then the final sentence was just an overall big problem. What is if I could summarize all of these barriers in a single sentence, it comes down to this, figuring out how these biochemical and biophysical cues interact and intersect to lead to disease states. And the problem is that there aren't the right tools to study this. So this is the first paragraph of my letter of intent. And hopefully it aligns or gives the reviewer a sense of what this is going to be about. The second portion is the second paragraph was really just an overview of the work that I was proposing. The first one was setting it up. This is an introduction to the field. These are the current problems. And then the second paragraph is this is how we're going to solve these problems. 4 years worth of work, one paragraph, one figure. And at the top, I just included a overall goal of the program. All right, so we want to reprogram macrophages, retrain the immune system using these tools that I will develop during the course in the award period. So one thing I'll point out is that we are going to tackle this. We're going to develop new tools, and conciseness is your friend. Brevity is your friend. One figure here is highlighting 4 years worth of work. Takes up very little space, but if you were to give a reviewer just this figure, they would have some idea about what this proposal was about. And that's I would say the standard you should shoot for. Again, you're trying to make it as easy on the reviewer as possible. All right, so the subsequent sentences talk a bit about the overall goals, and this is 1 or 2 sentences setting up a problem in the field and then a solution that we're going to pursue. Again, 4 years worth of work. It's not very detailed because it can't be, but all throughout it, you are highlighting what is novel. You are talking about why this hasn't been done and what is unique about your approach. And then finally, it ends by using language from that proposal call, which is, developing these tools will provide the first investigation into this frontier, right? So we're opening up new frontiers of science because we are doing this work. And so we're spending a lot of time motivating the work in this first paragraph. All right, so this paragraph, I'm not sure I really needed it. I don't know if it hurt me. I don't know if it helped me, if it was neutral. But what I did was just give a little bit more background. I still don't know if it was a benefit or not, but keep in mind that the reviewers are going to be from across all different kinds of scientific fields. They're going to be very smart and they'll pick things up if you describe them clearly. And I was mainly thinking I need to include a paragraph if there is an expert in this field to, at the very minimum, show that I know what I'm talking about. And so I included it. Again, I don't know if it was necessary, but I basically just gave a little bit more of an expert background on the chance that a reviewer wanted a little bit more confirmation that I was discussing something I knew about. Okay, so then we get to, so this is all setting it up. You're spending a lot of time motivating it, talking about the problem, motivating it, talking about the innovation, and now we're getting to the objectives. So I had three objectives, each roughly 1.5 years in terms of time to work on it, and each one is about 3/4 of a page. One figure, we're spending 3/4 of a page on it, and we are keeping it really high level. One thing and I will come back to this, but the purpose of this letter of intent is to propose interesting and exciting science. And so you're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the experimental details. You're going to talk about what you want to accomplish and put it as the first sentence so the reviewer knows what you're trying to do at the onset. A one sentence summary of how we're going to do it. Very high level, broad approach. A couple of experimental details, and then again, hammering home the idea that this new chemical tool, again, we're using language from the call, the first of its kind, will be developed, and these are the things that it will open up. These are the kind of studies that it will enable. The second objective has, I would say, an identical format. This actually was the 4 pages distilled into 3/4 of a page for my first letter of intent. I made the figure a little prettier, but this was the general idea that persisted from 2018. And again, I've condensed it into a fraction of the original length. Again, we're talking about the motivation, we're talking about the problem, and what this will actually enable. This was something that in the field, there was a citation calling this out as a grand challenge. And so if you can point to that in the field, then that's you're kind of appealing to authority. Look, other people think this is important. They've called it a grand challenge. It lends a bit more weight to your claims as well. And again, we start with the motivation. We talk about the objective in one sentence. We talk about how it's going to work and some of the justification. And then again, we're talking about the innovation and we're talking about the ramifications. I'm not talking about temperature conditions and whether I'm using triethylamine or Hunigs base to synthesize this. No one cares. What they care is what is the actual impact of this work. All right, so that is, and you want to end with that. Every objective portion should end with just driving home the importance of it and what this will enable. Okay, so I have a third objective, but again, it follows the same formula. And so that's really all I wanted to show you two of them, is that it's almost formulaic at that point. Um, Thinking about the conclusion, and it might be helpful to think about this first. This is where you are making your grand argument as to what your successful completion of these objectives will enable. All right. And you can use this language from mine if you want. Successful completion of the interdisciplinary plan will establish a new research frontier. Oh my gosh, this is exactly from the call. And we're highlighting the innovation of this approach. It's going to be very forward looking. These are the kinds of outcomes we could hope for if this is successful. And then I ended by talking about the accessibility, the democratization of these tools. We can ship these tools around the world, and kind of in line with the spectrophotometer being present in all labs, this is an enabling technology that's accessible to labs, because it can be portable, and I can just send a FedEx package to them and they can use it for their own studies. So again, that aligns with the ethos of the foundation and the Beckman program. So think about this one first. If you are trying to choose between ideas, think about the how easy is this section to write? Are you excited about it? If it comes really naturally, that's probably a good indication that your core idea, there's something there. And again, this is the last information you leave with the reviewer. And so this is going to be a very important part of the proposal. All right. So a couple final tips. Get your institutional endorsements like now. If you don't do anything else today on this proposal, contact your provost or whoever has to sign these things and get them in. In my experience, provosts disappear for the summer. And if you want to age very quickly, wait until July 31st to do this. So get those in ASAP. Yeah, you can have those in, I think, before you submit it. So you can just get these things submitted even before you have the proposal uploaded. So focus on that. If there's one thing you take away, just do this today. Never sacrifice clarity for style. No one wants to wade through your, creative writing exercise. Be very clear. Again, reviewers are going to be overworked and tired. Make it crystal clear what you are proposing and the impacts of your proposed work. As I said before, don't just jump in. It's a lot of effort to put this together. You only have two shots. Really be critical of your own ideas. Bounce them off your colleagues if you need to. And again, make sure it fits with the objectives of the program. Maybe it fits better with a different agency, and that's fine. Don't use it for this. Don't use it for this call. And most of all, have fun with this. There are so few opportunities out there to propose the really cool stuff. Some funding agencies say they look for high risk, high reward. That's It's easier to say that than it is to support it. And the Beckman Foundation really does. If you can justify it, if you can create a coherent plan for getting from where we are to this grand goal, you will be rewarded for it. The reviewers will recognize that. So don't just recycle an old NSF or NIH proposal. Really take advantage of this to propose something that you really love and that it just doesn't fit anywhere because it's too high risk. That's the thing that reviewers are really going to get excited about. All right, so I will end there. And I am happy to answer any questions. Program specific, I might be a little rusty on, but the website is very useful. But Denny, do you have anything you want to add?
So this is just a couple things. First of all, thank you. But just to remind everyone, please don't share any proprietary information about your proposal in the Q&A. We want you to keep that to yourself, but we're happy to answer program questions or more specific questions about Dylan's presentation. And again, Dylan and I are here to answer anything, but I am not the program administrator for this program specifically. So I may not know the answer to very specific programmatic questions. Please ask them anyway. I'm happy to try. If I don't know, I'm not going to give you the wrong answer. I am just going to tell you to email BYI@beckmanfoundation.org. I will put the email back up on the screen in 1 second. And Nicole will answer those as soon as she's back in the office next week. Please give her a little bit of time. She is just coming back, so it may not be Monday morning, but she will get to all of those emails. So I would love to answer anything that you have for us. And I know there's a couple in the chat, so I'm getting to those as well. How much necessary? So we have a question about it being necessary that it comes from the provost or the dean. If you have a signing official, yes. Okay. So as long as that person is the signing authority, that person is okay.
And you can probably check with your Office of Research Admin, and they'll get you to the right person. I still don't know anything about our bureaucracy because I refuse to learn.
Min?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question about the funding. So because of the uncertainty about whether the funds that was promised by a federal agency, whether they will come or not. So I haven't gotten an answer yet, but if it does come, it might bring me over the threshold, but if it doesn't come, I might still be eligible. So how do I approach such a situation?
Yeah, so the funding does not count towards your current funding chart unless you know for sure that that funding is yours. So something that you've applied for and you haven't heard back from, you do not want to include that in your current funding chart.
So there's a current project, but it's entering year 2, but I don't know whether, because of all the uncertainty, whether year 2 fundings will be awarded. So under normal circumstances, it will come, but at this time.
Got it. I'm gonna double check one note that Nicole left me. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna have you email her for that question just because of the uncertainty. I don't want to misdirect you. I'm gonna put that slide up right now so you can have her email again. Give me 1 second. There's her email address. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer for you.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Leah, so much for this sharing about your LOI. I noticed that this is a 4 years award, and you proposed the objectives from 0 to year 3. And how, do you think a timeline is actually important? And you say that your objective is kind of independent, but you kind of propose that, I'm going to finish objective 1 and I'm going to do objective 2, just based on the timeline you propose.
Yeah, timelines are like the first thing to go in terms of the actual execution of the project. And I mean, in practice, we're working on 1, 2, and 3 simultaneously. And it really just depends on what works right out of the gate and what needs a little bit more work to get started. So you're certainly not, it's great if you can adhere to it. I think everyone recognizes that when you are proposing something 4 years in the future, especially something high risk, things change. And you write an annual report and you just give updates on the work and if the timeline has changed. So it's a pretty easy thing to manage ultimately. It's a lot easier than the science, to be honest. Okay, it looks like there's a lot of questions, kind of very specific about, what counts as a major award and things like that. Um, yeah, so I'm looking at, let's see, Susan's questions. I think I mean, I would be hesitant to answer this, just because I'm not part of the foundation. I don't want to make a claim that's inaccurate.
Sorry, Susan, I'm just trying to get back to your question. Give me 1 second. So it's the dollar amount. You want to make sure that you don't pass that threshold. But we do want to make sure that we're not, like Dylan kind of highlighted, we want to make sure that these proposals are focused on things that are in line with our mission. So something that is not NIH funded, usually we're looking for those high risk, high reward proposals. So I think that's where those things overlap, right? Is that we're looking for something that is normally not funded by the NIH. And then again, please focus on that 225 threshold. I think those things are separate. Transition grants are okay. I see that question in here as well.
Yeah, I think if, especially like the HHMI Hannah Gray one, you might, it sounds like that would be okay, but I would certainly double check with Nicole to make sure it's not a disqualifier before you invest all the work in this.
In the guidance document and the FAQ on the website, there's also specific questions about being a co-PI and the amount. So that's another great resource in that interim. If you aren't sure if you may cross that threshold, please check out the FAQ web on the website. Please check out the guidance document. It does answer some of those co-PI questions that I'm seeing in here.
Danny, do you have stats on
Oh boy.
versus? Yeah, that's an interesting statistics question.
I don't. Let's see. Because it's blinded in the beginning, we were hoping that doesn't play a factor. We just want to make sure that you are in that 1 to 5 years. We shouldn't be. We're going to be looking at you as a package, looking at your proposal, looking at what you've been doing within your lab once we get to that full application. So I don't think I can answer the success rate specifically, but I just want to remind you that it is a package. It's not just on your seniority or anything like that.
I mean, I can speak kind of anecdotally about people at the symposium, but there's certainly people who have literally just started their career and were successful. And then I was toward the later bits. I already had quite a few avenues of investigations open, and so it really runs the gamut. I'd say on average. Probably people in their second to third year I'd say we're the most common age or career position is for the ones who are successful. Preliminary data. So yeah, this is interesting. I did not show any preliminary data. Again, with the blinding, it's a little tricky to show preliminary data. You can do it, but I would actually. You're pitching something that is supposed to excite reviewers, and almost if you show data, it almost kind of ruins the vibe, right? Here I'm proposing something so exciting, and then here's an NMR. It kind of takes you down back to reality, and you want to maintain the enthusiasm. You certainly can. If it's something that you need to show exists to move forward, then it might be necessary. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to it. I personally didn't actually include any, even though I had preliminary data at any stage in the overall application process.
There was a question about how many LOIs will move forward. I'm just going to announce it here too. About 100 applications will move forward from the LOI to the full application. Only 16 will move from the full application to the interview stage.
And I spent 80 hours on a 5-minute talk for the interview. So it's intense, but it's actually a lot of fun. Institutional support from the university mean at the proposal stage.
On the website and within the actual SurveyMonkey applied, there is instructions and information on what is needed on each document. So make sure you click through those and look at what is required. It's very clearly laid out for them. Technology. They don't have to be focused on technology. Just we want something that is high risk and high reward. I'm going to scroll back up to this slide up here just so you can see. We just want to find something that is contributing to advancements in chemistry or life science. It does not need to be an instrument. It doesn't need to be some kind of technology development. Feedback given after the interview. So there's no feedback given at the LOI stage to explain, for example, if you advanced, what we think we would like for you to expand on. The reviewers do not share any information. If you advance or do not advance, whether what they wish that they had seen differently, what they would love more information on, until the interview stage. So if your application does not advance to that interview stage, you will not receive any feedback on your application throughout the proposal process.
And Danny, you might not see this, but there's a Zoom quit unexpectedly, yet we're still all here. Error messer, I think it's obscuring the email.
Sorry about that. Let's see if I can fix that. How about now? Can you guys see that?
Looks like it crashed and then returned.
About that, everybody? Kicked me out.
There we go. Perfect.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Anything else we can answer for you? We have a couple more minutes.
Looks like.
I have a follow-up question about, so I saw the epic here, thank you for that. And the answer is that we cannot have like $225,000 per year. So is it calculated on a per year basis, or is the limit calculated on like the accumulated total?
I believe it's on an accumulative total at the time of the full application and the LOI.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Yeah, I had and another follow-up questions about eligibility. So I know there is this 10 years since graduating PhD. Is there any extension for, let's say, maternity leave or other life circumstances during the time?
Yes, I believe there is a stop clock, and on the application process, there is a place to submit maternity leave, other documents like that for a stop clock.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all again for your time. Please email Nicole at byi@beckman-foundation.org if you have any additional questions, or if we missed something, a nuanced part of your question, please email her. Like I said, she'll be back on Monday. Please give her a little bit of time to answer those emails, but she is wonderful, as she's been with the organization for a very long time, so she will know the ins and outs of all these funky questions. But we appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to reading your proposals in August. Thank you.